before we wrap this up, do you want to talk about what you're doing for deciding when to rest? Because it's really interesting, but I don't know if it's a cooked idea in your mind yet.
No, it's a cooked idea because it's the basis upon which I've actually gained. So the secret sauce, hink, to how I've gained a quarter inch in the last 60 days over the course of 22 sessions is I have basically taken a concept from training periodization that is known as autoregulation. Autoregulation relies on your body to tell you when you need to go heavy and when you need to go light. Now, you can do autoregulation based off of things like heart rate variability. You can do them off of like first thing in the morning grip strength tests. You can do them based off of more expensive means by like getting like these machines that read your autonomic nervous system, you know, parasympathetic versus sympathetic. So the concept is that like some days you're well fed, you're well rested, slept, you're hydrated, and you can go hard and heavy. That's not always going to be the case. Sometimes you're going to go in the gym and you're just not going to be, you know, ready to do much. And if you do too much, it's going to set you back, not set you up for going forward. So, my program of PE autoregulation has been this. Every single day, I measure my bone press stretched flaccid length. I know sort of what it is on a day-to-day basis. I also know about how much I can expect it to be at the end of a session. So I was telling BD that like recently, I think my starting number has been 227 to 228 millimeters, and my ending has been 234 to 235. So basically what I fuck off.
I just want to put it in context for people continue talking.
For me, what happens is my body seems to hold on to fatigue for a good couple of days, because if I get, you know, if I end a session, if one day my starting is 227, the next day it will almost assuredly be 228 or 229. And then if I do another session that day, it will almost assuredly the next day be 229 or 230. So here's where the autoregulation comes in. Going from, please nobody quote me on this fucking math. This is just like roundabout numbers. Okay. Going from 227 to 235 is like 3.6%. Now, if the next day I'm 228 or 229, then it's about 2.5%. If the next day I'm 229 or 230, and now mind you, on all of the end results, I'm assuming that I'm going to hit the same number at the end of these sessions. But if I am 229 or 230 and I only make it to 235, then that's less than 2%. So it's a wasted training session. I shouldn't have done it because I didn't actually exceed the amount, or I didn't actually place the amount of strain on the tissue that was necessary to go on. So what's funny, what I've noticed about this is that some days my body will hold on to a lot of fatigue. I will be like 3 millimeters longer the day after, and I know that I can't hit over 2% going from 229 or 230 to 235. So I won't train the next day. Now, some days, for whatever reason, I'll get 3 training days in a row. And again, I think it has to do with nutrition, sleep. I think it has to do with a lot of factors that we can't necessarily account for in these rigid programs like 2 on, 2 off, or 1 on, 2 off, things like that. Yeah, BD, go ahead and make your. I know you can clarify it a little bit better than I'm just like going on.
Hank, do you have any questions?
No, my only problem with this, and sometimes I just feel stupid as hell. I mean, but it's like, and maybe I just don't measure enough, but I could measure 3 times and I would get 3 different measurements. And so when you're talking about like, and I'm not talking about like wide discrepancy, but like certainly with it, when we're talking about measuring millimeters, like
Yeah.
for me, with like at least the little crappy ruler that I use, like, and we're talking about like bone stretch flaccid and like where I'm positioning the ruler, like there's just no way I could measure 2 millimeters of precision. I mean, even in like when I'm looking at X-rays, like they say anything within like 1 to 2 millimeters is like well within like an error just on like how you're measuring. So it's just like I'm not trying to invalidate anything you're saying. I guess I feel like more of like the common man, just because there's no way I'm gonna. I mean, for me, be able to measure with any kind of like precision like that. At least the techniques I'm using. Yeah.
So I should probably describe the method by which I use, because there was a time where I was measuring seated, and I realized, I told BD about this, I realized that my numbers were inconsistent because I would measure seated, and over the course of the session, I would be slumping down. And so my ending numbers were actually off. So the method by which I measure to make sure that I am very consistent is I always stand in the same place in my bathroom. I have my penis at the same height relative to my counter. I make sure that I squeeze my ass as hard as possible, pull my flaccid as hard as possible, and push the ruler as hard as possible. So with all of those things, I can consistently measure within a millimeter or two.
Yeah.
More power to you, man.
I don't care. And that's my setup here in this office. Yeah, when it comes down to the measuring, though, I can still have issues when it comes to like just having a bit of extra sweat on my hand. I can't pull as hard, and that can mess up the numbers. So that's why I tend to look at it from a week-to-week basis. Go ahead.
Can I tell you something really cool? Okay, so like, I take paper towels and I fold them on top of each other, and I cut little strips off of them.
For grip.
And I actually wrap that around my glands, and so I can consistently create the same amount of traction in the same place every time. So I get exactly what you're talking about, because I face that issue and I ask myself, like, what is it that I need to do to make these measurements more consistent from session to session?
Right.
Because exactly what you're saying, like sometimes I would pump or sometimes I wouldn't, and like, it's like, what can I do to eliminate these discrepancies? Once I started doing that, standing up as tall as I can, squeezing my ass, pushing, pulling as hard as you can, my numbers started getting very, very predictable. And that was how I knew I was coming across like really good measurements, is because I could actually track across the days and see I was hitting the same numbers every single time.
Yeah, to me that just seems kind of like a more of like an expert. Like, I don't know how long, I forgot how long you said you've been doing this, but it's like I've you've seen the guys' measurements on there. They're like, oh, look at me, I gained a half an inch in 6 weeks, and it's like you see that the ruler's like at an angle or pressed in at half an inch. And so I just for at least for speaking for the common man here, I just think that like I don't know how reliable that's going to be, but I mean,
sure, absolutely. And I think that BD and I have talked about this. I think that this is actually more important for the advanced users than it is for beginners, because in the same sense, you can take a brand new trainee, you can have somebody who's brand new to going to the gym, and you can have them do their 1 rep max on a bench press every day of the week, every single day of the week, and they're going to grow from it, and they're just going to get stronger from it. If you try to take somebody who is an elite level, Olympic lifter, power lifter, it doesn't matter. We know there's actually something called the law of accommodation. And the law of accommodation states if they try to max out the same movement more than 2 times in a 2-week period, they will actually regress. Their central nervous system goes into a state of shock, and it actually burns out those neurological sort of pathways. So what I'm saying is that I think that a program like this is best for people who are intermediate to advanced, because they are the ones that need to realize that they actually need more rest. I think when you're newer to PE, sure, you can do it every day. But I think that the more advanced you get, I think you actually need more rest, not less. And I know that that goes blatantly against what the old school guys say, but you know, it's sort of like everybody's first inch. It's sort of like everybody says like their first inch is the easiest to gain. My second inch was exactly as easy to gain as my first one. And you know, I told BD, I mean, my length gains have been very, very consistent. I've never actually done a full on like month long decon or anything like that. Like, you know, but
Okay. You've only been doing this for like 15, 18 months, right?
I'm gonna write about that in September because I don't want anybody to anybody to make expectations based on how long I've been doing
Yeah.
this.
Yeah. What was I gonna say? Okay, back to this fatigue thing real quick. What Perv is doing lets me extrapolate what he's doing and make it much easier to digest for you guys. So what he's really saying is the idea of cumulative fatigue is that if you get below 2%, which means you cannot generate more fatigue than you have currently, there is no point to train, you need to take a break. I set up my routines to avoid ever having to worry about this cumulative fatigue. So that's why I'm like every other day, that's going to be plenty of time to recover. Sure, it may not be 100% optimized, but it's less of a pain in the ass to stab yourself with a ruler every day. And then every month you take a week off, and that way you can have the bounce back session and the potential overgrowth period.
I also do that. I think you and I are on the same 3 weeks on and 1 week
3 to 4
off.
depends on your body, but yeah, I say 4 just to keep it clean.
So you break for a week after the fourth week.
Yes, so it's a 5 week
Okay.
block, if that's how you want to put
Okay.
it.
Yeah. No. I do 3 weeks. I do 3 weeks and then take a week completely off. And the thing is, and again, I track all of this, you know, in a manner that is admittedly psychotic. You and I have talked about this before. It is every time I go on a week long break, I come back with a longer stretch flaccid.
Yeah, the only time I missed was when I went on vacation, and that's probably because of
Yeah.
jet lag. Anyway, anything you'd like to add, Hank, before we move on?
No, I'm good.
You're good. All right. All right.
I'm going to write an article about it, so all will be revealed.